Welcome to the Get Stoked podcast with Paul Stokes. Life lessons learned on the water that you can apply to everyday life. Now, here's Paul.
All right. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Get Stoked podcast, where we talk about life lessons learned on the water that you can apply to everyday life. And super excited to have Ron Scarpa with us for this episode. How you doing, Ron?
I'm doing great, Paul. Good to see you, man.
Yeah,
you look good.
Totally. Thanks, man.
Good.
Thanks, man.
Wisconsin must be treating you well. Everyone loves that state.
You know what? Wisconsin does treat me well. You know, got a lot of friends, and you certainly look forward to summer.
Good people there for sure.
Yeah. So, Ron and I go way back. Really, ever since I started competing in the late 80s, I met Ron, and then of course been on a travel to some world championships with Ron, and he's coached me as a student at a ski school back in the late 90s, and anyway, I consider him a dear friend. He's an incredible champion, a great guy. Everyone loves spending time with Ron. As you know, we're going to find out right now, but he's known he's known as a good storyteller. If you've hung out in a barefoot boat with him, you know that. But we'll see today if we can tell some good stories.
Sure, I'm sure we can. We'll make something up if we. We got it.
So no, let's we'll hang out here for a little bit and chat it up and see what we can uncover.
Yeah. Well, thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah, it's cool. Yeah, thanks for joining us. So, a couple of things we talked about just earlier in kind of preparing for this. One of them was how this sport that we both spent so much time in our lives working hard at, it's not an instant gratification sport. And these days, in the world of instant gratification, if you're gonna check out and try to be a barefoot water skier, don't expect it to come fast, right?
Right. I think that's probably where even our sport suffers, because it's not that wakeboarding's easy, for example. I mean, at high level wakeboarding, some of the crazy stuff they do is super hard. But the minimum wakeboarding, getting up on a wakeboard, kind of almost anyone can do that. Barefooting, not almost anyone gets to do that. You know, nowadays with booms and all the other devices, it helps, but it's not that sport. And you know, you get popped once or twice, and it's an attitude adjuster for sure.
No doubt.
Yeah.
And beyond the equipment, having a good location and really someone that really knows not just how to barefoot, but how to teach it. I mean,
I've seen, one of the things I probably was the most passionate about in barefooting, and I think it helped me the most in my career, was teaching people. I learned so much from people. I mean, I literally would be teaching someone who was a complete beginner, and I would recognize or learn something really advanced from them. And I think that's what helped me a lot, you know. I also think when I wrote my book, two books, I mean, it is so much work, but you start trying to put words down on paper. When you're talking, you can kind of like hack your way through it. When you're writing it, it's got to be pretty concise. So those were two things that really impacted me on how I taught, and also how it helped me learn, you know. But it's pretty incredible, you know. But when I was at the ski school, people would come to me like, whatever, it's been a while since I taught, but 15 or 20 years ago, it's like, listen, the wheel has been invented. You don't have to chip it out of stone again, you know. People would be, it's like so horrible in their technique. You just, especially with YouTube and podcasts, there's so much information out there. You don't have to go out there and beat yourself up. It doesn't make sense.
Yeah, take the time.
So you can hurt yourself, you know. So.
You can.
Yeah.
And I wanted one thing that stood out to me. You just said was learning from others. Even if you're the expert, I found when I coached, people would in the boat would say, "Well, this is kind of what we tell people." And they would come up with some ingenuity, pretty unique ways to kind of say the same thing you're trying to communicate, but they'd say it a little bit different. And as an experienced coach, you learn, eventually you have a bunch of things that you can tell them the same thing, but tell it a few different ways, and finally you find something that clicks.
Well, I think when you do something every day, it gets monotonous. So you have a tendency, like you have your canned, your canned information that you give to people, and you just recite it over and over again. And then there's times when you're a little more passionate or excited about it, where you can actually, you're sharing some real insight. One of the things, Paul, is you can tell somebody exactly what to do, but even before you know exactly what they're gonna do before they do. So no matter what you tell them, they're still gonna do it. And I've heard, shouldn't you tell them this? Shouldn't you tell them that? It's like, no, just let them go one time, and then it kind of like settles some things.
Yeah, you can't fill their head with too much information.
No.
Yeah.
There aren't, but it's pretty cool. I mean, what I've found very interesting now is, and I love the sport still. I still ski recreationally. I always kind of considered myself a recreational skier, really, because I liked a lot of the, I show skied a little bit, I jumped a little bit, I trick skied. I did a lot of different aspects of water skiing, but overall, I just liked being out there,
Being on the water.
Yeah. But like now, with like, when for example, like Dave Small was young, he was an up-and-comer, or even Patrick Warner. These guys were young, really good kids, and there weren't a lot of Andre, when they came along, de Villiers. But now, like Jackson Gerard, there aren't a lot of good 3-eventers or overall skiers that were young. They were great at one thing or the other thing, but not really complete. Now these guys are super good,
It's amazing watching them.
Yeah.
So tell me the trick or the thing in barefooting that was the most challenging for you to learn, where you got frustrated and maybe you were like, and maybe there wasn't. I know that some things had to come harder to you than others. So what challenged you mentally to keep after and master, so maybe you could put it in your trick run or something like that?
Well, so when I learned, I wasn't like doing trick runs. I was just learning. So, but I would say the hardest thing was back barefooting. I did that kind of blind, I had my middle brother Glenn drove me a lot. It was back in the day where you were flipping a ski and stepping off a long line. I had an 85 horsepower glass drawn tri-hull, and the rope was towed on the lifting ring down
the back.
bottom. We didn't even have a tow pylon. I learned to tumble like that, but doing that, I had a fully stretchy, like slalom line, 12-inch handle. My neck grew about 3 inches that year, just from falling so many times. Yeah. So that was a super hard thing to learn for me. Just no driving, no equipment, no knowledge, no YouTube, no nothing. So, but I did see it at Cypress Gardens a couple of times.
Okay.
So that was helpful. But anyway, that was like maybe the hardest thing I'd learned. And turns were, they're the impossible. They're like heroin for people, I mean, it's just, they're such a drug. Once you learn how to do the turn front to back or back to front, it's like, you have to do it. You just have to turn, but they were super hard because maybe the first 25 of them I smashed my head, but I had a revelation on those pretty early, and I got to where I was turning pretty nicely, and those were days when I didn't use a wetsuit, and I was doing a pair of Levi cutoffs.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Wow.
We literally stopped. I stopped tumble turning with my life jacket because my dad got pissed off because we were ripping too many life jackets, just blowing them out. So
that blows me away.
I was doing back deeps and tumble turns in Levi cutoffs.
With the vest?
No,
just
no vest.
Without a vest.
The vest. You ever try to do it back deep with a vest?
That wouldn't work.
Doesn't work.
Yeah.
No. You're pretty.
Wow.
You get pretty tough. We were talking about our feet earlier. My whole body.
Yeah, your whole body.
My whole body was like that.
Wow, that's amazing. I never really thought about you guys learning all the things you did. mean, I hate to say the years, but I mean, it must have been late 70s, early 80s.
It was. Late 70s for me.
Where the boom hadn't come out. You guys were not even behind inboard ski boats, not wearing barefoot wetsuits.
Nope.
And learning all this, you know.
It was pretty awesome.
Yeah, that's pretty impressive.
But I will say this, I mean, as a result of, so an 85 horsepower on a 17-foot boat, you know, your max speeds may be 37, 38, so it's perfect. It kept me from killing myself, right? You know, so there was a huge advantage for me, right? It was just hammer it down, you know, as slow out of the hole and slow to top speed is just hammer. So that was a good thing. That's something that's just, stupidity and luck, right? So that worked. Good wake, all that stuff. And then, you know, I lived on a great lake, and it just happened to be like, you know, that lake's magic. I mean, where I used to live, Lake Ned in Winter Haven, I mean, millions of people are barefooted on that lake. I mean, there's a lot of, you know, it's
a lot of history.
Yeah, a lot of good history. McCormick's actually used to have their ski school and stuff, ran a boat there way back in the 70s.
Before the private lake setup they had?
Yeah, they used to be in Winter Haven.
Okay.
Yeah, so it was a lot of fun. I mean, yeah, it was good, all good.
But you chipped away at it. There was not much instant gratification. Right?
I did. You know, I did chip away, but I've told people this. So I had 2 older brothers and a younger sister. My younger sister really didn't ski a lot, but everyone in my family at one time or another barefooted, you know. But we all learned to. My brothers learned to ski a little bit before me. They were older, and in every sport that we had done up to that point, you know, football or baseball, size mattered, you know. So they were bigger and older and stronger and faster, so they were always better. You know, I was always the younger brother who wasn't as good. But we learned how to ski. They learned to ski a little bit before me, but like we were trying to learn how to barefoot, and I happened to be the littlest of them. I had giant, you know, my feet were the same size that they are now, pretty much, you know, and I weighed probably 125 pounds. And they didn't quite get it. You know, they just had enough muscle to muscle it and do it wrong. I didn't. And, you know, so we thought barefooting was the pinnacle of water skiing. So the minute I saw like that daylight where I was better than them at it, and they did too. You know what I mean? Naturally, they're like, shit. Okay. And that was just my dream.
That was it.
That was it. You know, it was the equalizer. You know, it got to the point where they literally, you know, kind of quit. You know, they're like, no, that's his deal.
That's his.
That's his
you
deal.
Can take it and run.
Yeah.
Awesome.
It was a lot of fun. We're very competitive. We were.
So there's your little dog.
He is. He's hunting lizards.
So hey, you had this amazing career. You know, we won't even count the number of national championships, a lot. Several world overall championships. You held every world record at some point. And then at some point you got to the age where your body was kind of saying, you know what, you've been there, done. Well, you won enough worlds and you kind of been there, done that. Tell us about how that felt when, you know, you kind of realized that at least competitive barefooting was over, the monotony of the coaching and the lessons in the ski school, and when you decided to move on from that, and how that was challenging, a little scary. Just tell us about that.
So I started switching gears in like 03, 04. So I formed a construction company in 04. I was in the off season. I was doing rental properties, rehab, and stuff like that. That was just what I was. I don't know why, but that's what I was doing. Okay. Excuse me. So I was doing construction work anyway, of some kind or another, and I just did a lot of that 10 years prior. I was traveling a lot. I started a family. Sorry.
Should have had some water out here.
There's water there, but so anyway, I got married in '96. No big deal. My wife was a water skier. She skied for the Italian team. we were traveling, clinicking, doing all sorts of stuff together. It was awesome. Had kids. When the kids started coming, traveling became harder for me, became harder for my wife. So I then started this construction company, and things were going well, but it was going fairly well in the ski school, fairly well in construction, but it was just demanding so much of my time. I think ski school got monotonous, but I loved it anyway. There's
At least looking back, for sure.
no, it wasn't. I don't think I ever regretted it. We always had a fairly great team. Our customers, they were people of every walk of life, smarter than us in many ways, successful in business and in life, and it's just great. That's like barefooting, So it was educational, it was fun, and we were all had a common ground of our love for the sport, and it was a lot of fun. And Florida doesn't suck, you know what I mean? And when you get Europeans or people from Wisconsin, and you're in April and you're in Florida,
They're in heaven.
They're in
heaven.
They're using their hard-earned dollars to come down and ski with us. We wanted to make sure they had a good time. So, but I just got covered up in business, and it was, even running the ski school, sponsors, and the whole inner workings of what I was doing in the sport of water skiing, and then plus construction is just kind of consumed me. I didn't have a lot of time to do both, and I was doing both, but I think I was doing both not as well as I should have been doing it.
Yeah.
So I decided to transition out of the ski school, and yeah, do I look back and regret it? Sure. I think I always have, when you have such fond memories, I don't know that it's regret. It's just that it was such a great time. I don't know what you even call it. I look back with great joy of all the stuff with water skiing,
Yeah, I think it's not healthy, and it's a waste of time to look back with regret.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. I look back with great joy, and realize just how lucky I was. I mean, I knew I was lucky when I was doing it, but I know even, more so. So that's how I got in construction.
Yeah, and hey, must be a lizard.
He's
So,
Simba.
So the last thing I wanted to touch on here for a few minutes is, something that you said to me, and maybe the lesson is, honestly, you never know what impact you're having on people just when you say simple things. Like it might not be a big deal, but people grab onto things. And one of the things you said to me that stuck with me, that you said, a long, long time ago.
Right, I probably don't even really.
Yeah, of course you don't. But you said, it's always frustrating when you see athletes that don't live up to their potential. And I think that's probably the case in all areas of life. People have such great potential, and there's natural talents, maybe, like you said, either mentally or physically, but you still have to do the hard work to let those natural talents flourish.
So maybe the life lesson is if you want to be good at something, you don't work your strengths. Okay, you need to recognize your strengths, but you work your weaknesses. And in this world of instant gratification, you set a long-term plan. And when you're young, to have a long-term plan is difficult. So you need to think, for the season, and then maybe for the next 3 seasons. And I think goals, no matter in what we do, I think are super important. I've literally, in life and construction, I've had to revisit some of those lessons and think about goals and what I want to accomplish, and the best way to move forward. And I think that's something that one of the things, listen, you barefoot water ski, a reverse, any reverse trick, horrible,
uncomfortable,
horrible. But like a lot of sports, you injure your dominant side. You break your hand in basketball and you shoot with your left hand for a season or for months. Barefoot water skiing, no, not that we would ever hurt our knee or our shoulder.
Never.
But, you start doing you start toe turning on your bad leg, the whole time. It's funny, when I was doing a lot of magazine stuff with writing articles monthly and stuff with, Water Ski Magazine, Tom King's like, Ron and Terry Dorner, even when we were doing the book, the pictures would be better from, when you're reading from the left page to the right page if you weren't doing your basic. You were doing the opposite leg, the reverse, because the way the sequence lays out on the page. I never understood it, right? And I'm like, yeah, right, do your own reverse toe turn, for photos to look good. But we wound up doing, they're like, you can do it, you can do that. You wind up doing a lot of that stuff. And it's like, you're like, well, yeah, you can do that, but you would never, challenge yourself, but stuff like that happens, I have a guy that I'm skiing with locally. I started skiing a little bit more.
That's great to hear, by the way.
Yeah, it's fun. I'm having a lot of fun, and he's trying to learn his toe holds. And I'm like, can you toe hold on a trick ski? Can you toe hold on a water ski? He's like, I never tried it. I'm like, well,
let's do it.
I'm like, why are we doing this at 43 or 44 miles an hour? Why don't you do that? So I gave him some homework the last time we skied, so we'll have to see how he did. Yeah. But it's the instant grab. He wants to do the toe hold, but going slow, riding a trick ski or a regular old ski. It's a great practice. Chipping away.
Yeah, chipping away.
Chipping away at it.
Yeah, another thing we mentioned earlier was the easy path is going downhill.
Oh yeah.
The comfort zone.
Yeah.
And really, to accomplish anything in life and get good at something, like you said, the easy way is just to focus on your strengths.
Yeah.
But the tougher way is to make yourself uncomfortable, focus on maybe your weaknesses, and ultimately that's gonna get you.
Yeah. When I would train, like when I would travel for a tournament, and I always, there was a time when I was so not in tune. Maybe when I was younger, stronger, better, everything. You didn't recognize that there was any difference. You had excess of everything, energy and strength and all that stuff. But as you get older and you start learning, you realize that, after you travel, you shouldn't try to go out, travel to Australia for a world. You don't go and try to go all out, and you can take segments of what you're learning. You can take a segment. You don't have to learn the whole trick. Just work one little segment of the trick. And you work the piece of it, and you got to realize that you're working just a piece and try to make a subtle difference, and you work several of those pieces together and you put them together. It works. I
used to break down my trick runs like that.
Always
little sections of the runs.
Yeah, it's a great way to do it. There's always a transition between one trick to the next where you were wasting a lot of time or pumping the handle or doing stuff that you didn't need to do that you could, that you can get rid of. And, we all evolve over time, we should anyway, but, and get a little smarter. But, that's how it goes, Yeah.
Well, great conversation with you, Ron.
Thanks, Paul.
Fun to kind of touch on those things, and always great to hear from you and spend time with you. So I really appreciate you, and
I appreciate you.
Yeah.
I'm glad you're doing well, and I'm glad all that's going. So,
all right.
So my last question for you is Footstock. What's going on there this year? You training?
Well,
you
I'm training hard. I'm
Okay.
getting very ready. I've been episode 1. If you haven't seen it, it's about my goal of winning Footstock.
Okay.
And actually, I've set the goal of being a multiple-time champion.
Okay.
And the first one's dropping this year.
Okay.
So I journal about it.
Mm-hmm.
Not daily, but several times a week. I'm journaling about it. I'm working with a guy that's writing workouts for me, specific to the muscle groups that I know I need. I'm working with a nutritionist that's helping me control not only my calories, but the macros, which is how much protein, carbs, and fat. I'm breaking all that down. I'm tracking every day. I'm hitting
Goals.
my workouts. I'm hitting my diet.
Mm-hmm.
I'm getting strong. I'm in really good shape. All the guys that I'm gonna beat are in my head when I'm working out.
Yeah.
You know, like Keith. Keith is actually, this is funny.
Keith who?
Keith St. Onge is the only one that's actually laughed at me when I said I was gonna win Woodstock.
Uh-huh.
No one else is like, ha ha ha, yeah, that's what you said last year. You know, he kind of gives me that.
Did he win last year?
He got second last year. Fleck, who we were just talking to on the
phone. Oh yeah.
He won.
I know that. I do know that because I Peter yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, these guys that are all my friends, they're all my friends, and it's all just fun competition. But I can see, just like I could picture in my head anytime, wherever I was in the world, I could picture Ron smiling. Well, what I do is I put these guys that I know can
picture
beat me,
Keith laughing.
I picture him smiling, and then I turn it into him laughing at me, which it's easiest for me to do with him because he actually
laughed at you.
Laughed at me.
And that sometimes you need a life-changing experience. My first nationals I skied was Waco, Texas, 1979.
The first one?
Tyler, Texas.
It was Waco, the first one. The first nationals was
Waco.
No,
78 was 78 was Waco.
Okay.
I think
that was before
I think
my
79 was Tyler, Texas.
Okay.
And I remember fantasizing, we had a handle tied up there and we were going to do this and that and blah blah blah. And I remember William Farrell, I was 79, I don't know, I was 15 years old, and William basically like snatched the handle out of my hand and like threw me off to the side, like, you're not doing those 4 turns, boy, you're never going to do 4 turns, because I was like going to do 4 turns.
Yeah.
Oh, and trust me, I love William, but I've made him pay for that.
For that one?
Oh,
yeah.
He has paid for that his whole life, you know, whether he knows it or not. But yeah, that's what you got to do.
Yeah. That's it's just healthy.
That's a good goal.
Yeah, it's a good goal. It's a good goal.
Attainable.
It's totally attainable. That's one of the reasons it's set is, and sticking with you, saying you don't want to see. You'd be disappointed if someone didn't reach their potential.
Yeah.
I know that I have that in me, and it's happening.
There's a lot of variables to that. It's not like just 100% skill, and I don't mean that.
Well, Flex won 10 of them, so there's something to it. Yeah.
There's money involved.
Money involved.
If Fleck wins 10, there's always money involved.
It's true. Yeah. It's true. That definitely motivates.
Yeah, he's never X Games. He's never jumped better.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. No,
well, I appreciate you asking, and I know you care.
Yeah,
and,
I do.
I'll be proud.
I'll be pulling for you, man.
That it happened.
I hope you beat Keith and Peter. They deserve it.
Yeah.
It'll be good for them. Humble pie for those boys. Thank you very much.
Take care.
All right.
See you next time.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks for listening to the Get Stoked podcast with Paul Stokes. You can contact Paul at ontheballpaul.com. We look forward to seeing you next time. Until then, stay stoked.